All right, we're all set.
Great, thanks, Jen. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Matt Del Conte. I am an associate professor of English at Onondaga Community College, and I'm also the project director for our learning community. And I hope wherever you're tuning in from is brighter, figuratively at least, than what we're seeing here in Syracuse. Anyways, today's webinar is the first of 5 fall webinars. If you've been following along, you know that our learning community is beginning its 4th year. And that also marks the final stage of at least this leg of the project. And to help celebrate all the success and certainly the hard work that we've put into this initiative, we've been presenting a capstone webinar series, began in the spring, and it's going to continue throughout the fall. As Jennifer mentioned a minute ago, you can access recordings of previous webinars and also find information and registration for upcoming webinars at the SUNY Center for Professional Development page, and Jennifer has linked that in the chat. Today, I'm really excited to welcome some colleagues from Finger Lakes Community College, Maureen Moss-Fury, Beth McCabe, and Jacqueline Termini. And they're going to share some of their work and the impact it's had on students in a presentation entitled Lessons Learned, FLCC's Journey to a Co-requisite Model. Before I turn it over to our presenters, I just want to provide a little bit of context. For most of you, this is a reminder, but it's very positive news, so we don't mind reminding about these types of things. Some background about our learning community. It began in the spring of 2018 with an initial cohort of 14 campuses, and a year later introduced a second cohort, and we now total 27 campuses from across SUNY. Our main goal has always been to increase the number of co-requisite developmental English courses, recognizing the best practices around that method of delivery for developmental writing. One of our major successes, certainly not the only, but one of the major successes is that as a learning community, an aggregate assessment, we have increased first-year composition pass rates for developmental writing students by 83%. And that's a percentage that we all should be proud of, we've all contributed to, and it's exciting to share. And in terms of our impact, at this point, and it continues to grow exponentially as our programs grow, we have impacted over 15,000 students, and we've trained over 420 faculty from 33 campuses at events like this and larger events most of you have been part of throughout the 4 years. So with that, I want to hand it over to our presenters, Maureen, Beth, and Jacqueline, and thank you.
Thanks, Matt. So I'm Maureen, and I'll be talking about the program background and history. So probably similar to many other community colleges, we had separate courses. I started at FLCC 27 years ago. So we had a separate developmental studies department, for one thing, devoted to our developmental English offerings, along with, at that time, we had support for students with disabilities. We had adult basic education. We had the academic support was all under our area, and that has over the years spread to other areas of the college. But primarily we had 2 courses. One was called College Composition, our developmental writing course, and the other was called Effective Reading. Many students also took our college study skills, college study strategies course as well. So many students took 3 developmental English sort of courses in their first semester before going on to college level English if they were successful. At one point, the English faculty in the humanities department objected to the name College Composition because the English 101, the first college level writing course, was called Composition 1. So we changed that to Foundational Writing, and to make it parallel, we changed the reading course to Foundational Reading. Also, way back in those first probably 10, maybe 15 years, we had college credit for our developmental courses through some vote that was taken that was approved by the state sometime in the 1980s or something. That has changed since then as well. Let's see. Then in I don't know about, I should know the year, 2014, I believe it was, we moved from the two separate reading and writing classes. The college studies strategies course kind of went away on its own due to credit crunch and students, not having the room for it in their programs. But the foundational reading and writing were still required based on mainly the students' results on the Accurate Placer test. Let's see. Oh, so in 2014, we developed an integrated reading and writing course to put the reading and writing into one course. We had 2 levels, which was a little unusual, I guess. We had a 5, now we are in imputed credits. We no longer have credit for our courses. We had a 5 contact hour, 5 imputed credit course called English 090, and then a 3 credit, imputed credit 3-hour class called English 095, and both were integrated reading and writing. Both of them, they weren't sequential. The outcomes in both led successful students into our Composition 1, the college level course. We always had, even when 27 years ago, a lot of a huge emphasis on professional development in the department, and bringing our adjuncts along with our full-time people into all of our professional development and work on the courses. We also had a big commitment to assessing every single semester, assessing artifacts from the courses to strengthen and improve the classes. So that philosophy has kept on through all these years. We also have offered our developmental courses online. I believe it was 2004, the first year when I developed our foundational writing for online. I was at a academic senate meeting, and we had a new major called e-commerce. And it was announced that any student would be able to take their entire degree program online. And I said, wait, what about students who have to take developmental coursework? So I developed the online section, and we've always offered our courses in that modality along with the traditional face-to-face, and now the 25 other modalities that we currently have during COVID. Not really that many, but kind of feels like it sometimes. And we pride ourselves on supporting our students in the online environment. Our online learning department works closely with the faculty using Starfish. The online learning department reaches out to students who are not showing up in class or instructors are worried about. Within the first couple of weeks, they get a phone call from the online learning department. And midterm grades too, at that point, students are approached or contacted by the online learning department. And our faculty who teach our current course, which I'll get to in a second, today online, kind of treat it not only as an introductory English reading and writing course, but also as a sort of intro to college class, and how to be succeed in an online learning environment as well. So we take on all of those things and try to support our students wherever they are. So I mentioned professional development. We've always done that, done lots of conferences and brought in speakers as well. When we first developed our integrated reading and writing course, the college had an internal strategic plan grant process, and we were able to apply for and receive funding that allowed us to hire consultants from Monroe Community College. They worked with us as we developed our 2 levels of integrated reading and writing. 2014, we were doing that work. Let's see, I just got distracted by a little question there. So we were fortunate to have that internal strategic plan grant and funding. And then we were able to pay our faculty members to come to our professional development events, which we had in the summer, in the fall, in the spring, an ongoing series with, a different focus at each one. So our goal too in our developmental courses is to make our classes as consistent as we can so that our students are achieving the outcomes in a kind of a consistent way. Let's see. Then this happened. We redesigned our English 095. Then when we were moving to the co-requisite model in 2019. So again, with the help from the SUNY Co-Rec initiative grant, we were able to again bring in a consultant. This one was from the University of Texas at Austin, paid professional development for our faculty. And we redesigned our higher level developmental course. And it is called Analytical Reading and Writing. And it has a real focus on reading and reading across the disciplines. There's writing elements too, but they're not the traditional English, our English 101 composition 1. They're not the traditional English sort of essays, but they're written material that would be typical of the material required in these classes, like history, psychology, sociology, biology. So students write in a different form and do a lot of analytical reading. Let's see, what else can I tell you? So when we redesigned, so that was in 2019, that's when we created the co-requisite with our English 101, our composition 1. So in fall of 2019, we went through the steps of having the course approved, our curriculum and assessment committees, academic senate. Then we rolled it out to the entire college community in a large academic and student affairs meeting. This was in fall 2019. And of all the changes we'd ever made, kind of under the radar, we didn't get a lot of attention. But when we said all students are going to be able to take college level composition in their first semester, well, we got a lot of notice all of a sudden. People were kind of up in arms about it. The course had already been approved, and we did start teaching it in spring of 2020. We also made placement changes at the same time, so many more students placed directly into our college level English 101 as well. So suddenly all students would be in English 101 in the first semester, and we had colleagues in various departments that were quite concerned about it. So I was kind of reflecting on our title here, lessons learned. I would say lessons we're still learning. FLCC's journey, we're still kind of on the road with implementing our co-requisite model, and my colleagues will go into more detail on that. But we believe, and you'll see some evidence that the course is really strong and that students who take it benefit from it. But we're still kind of new in this in this period because of COVID, which we'll get into, but these concerns and complaints and worries from our colleagues outside of our discipline have pretty much dissipated. We do not get people running to us like, oh my God, these students are taking college composition and they're a mess. We're not hearing that at all. So we are still learning, and we look forward to any input that we can get from our audience members today. So thanks for joining us. Now I'm handing this off to Jackie.
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm Jackie Termini, and I'm just going to talk a little bit. Thank you, Maureen, for giving us the background, but I'm really glad to be here today and have the opportunity now to share a little bit about our journey, with moving to this co-requisite model, and more importantly, how we really made it our own. So since Maureen provided a little bit of background and context for you, I'd like to add to that by sharing a little bit about some of the things that kind of happened along the way. In January of 2020, we were very excited to start the first iteration of our new co-requisite model. For me personally, it was really exciting to get to that point because I have been involved in this process pretty much from the beginning, and I felt strongly that everything we did for years before we got to this point really allowed us to get to this point. So as Maureen mentioned, we went from these two separate developmental reading and writing courses to a two-level integrated reading and writing course, to a one-level integrated reading and writing course, and then to this analytical reading and writing course that was also a co-requisite with our composition course or that English 101 credit-bearing course at the same time. And having been involved in pretty much all of those different iterations of the course, I felt that with each step in that process, we were very purposeful about how we, created the next iteration. So what we learned from the first, our first attempt to change something that, change these two classes that had always been separate and had always been taught this way. And as Maureen said, in, different departments and all those kinds of things. But we then moved from, having two developmental studies courses that were separate to kind of putting them together and so on. But each step, I feel we did a lot of reflection on, what we took from that and how we, wanted to change moving forward while still paying attention to national trends, while still paying attention to, what our colleagues were doing and in, neighboring community colleges and stuff as well, so that we could really make careful decisions about what made sense for our students at our institution. So here it is, this spring semester of 2020, and we're feeling really confident about our new model and all we did to get to this point and all ready to go. And the semester gets started, we're cruising along and COVID hits. So I imagine you're not surprised that COVID would come up in this presentation somewhere, since I don't know that I can think of anything in the last year and a half or so that really hasn't been affected by COVID in one way or another. COVID, as you know, was very draining, there's no doubt, but not just because everyone had to adjust so quickly, but really because there were so many unknowns. And for educators, people who thrive on research-informed decision-making, we didn't really have the research for that. We didn't have precedences, really. We didn't have other models or benchmarks to use, for how to transition in a week or 2 weeks. So we had teachers who were, in our case, adjusting to a new curriculum, a new model, and now new modalities all at the same time. I can speak for myself as a professor. I'm much more apt to embark on a new modality like teaching online, for instance, when I'm confident in what I'm teaching already. So for example, though I taught online classes when we had the two separate developmental studies courses, I did teach each of those online. But when we moved to an integrated reading and writing model, I actually chose not to teach them online for a while because I felt strongly that I really wanted to get to know the content better. Felt like the more comfortable I was with the content and the structure of the course, then the better I could be to jump into a new modality and take it from doing it face to face like I was used to then putting it online. During COVID, we didn't really have that option. So I give a lot of our faculty, full-time and part-time, a lot of credit for being able to kind of adjust quickly to the changes in the course, as well as a change in modality as well. So we needed, to really adjust quickly, and they did a great job. So another thing that happened as we were moving through this process, or throughout our journey here, was we had a change in leadership at our college at the AVP or associate vice president level. Though the former AVP was in support of the co-requisite model and helped us to speak with faculty and bring the change to the curriculum committee and everything we needed to do to move forward, he also had strong feelings on how to list the courses in the college catalog and why he didn't actually want them listed as co-requisites. So he wanted students to still have the option to take the courses at the same time, or to take the developmental course first and then the college level course, in a different semester in the next semester, if they wanted to, because he felt that it gave them an option to be more confident as they did so, and to think about what worked best. It was sort of a different take on the co-requisite model, and not really an approach that's shared by our new AVP. So this was just something that for us, those that were doing it, had to kind of work through as we moved forward. On a related note, moving to the co-requisite model, even more than moving from separate developmental studies courses to integrated ones, also meant that we needed to provide support for the instructors through professional development. Maureen mentioned earlier, we've been very consistent about professional development and keeping instructors on the same page as much as possible. And we've been lucky that we've always had a strong core group of full-time and adjunct instructors who taught our developmental studies courses over and over again. So when we went to those instructors along the way and said, hey, we'd like to move from 2 separate classes to 1 integrated class, it didn't really require a huge jump in content or pedagogy from what they were doing. Most of those instructors were pretty comfortable with that, because the overall content and skills they'd been teaching really didn't change all that much. However, when we talked about moving from an integrated reading and writing course to an analytical reading and writing course, we did significantly change the content and the focus. So the analytical reading and writing course, and Maureen did mention this, has a lot more emphasis on reading and writing sort of across the curriculum. So genres include things like reading and writing from a humanities perspective, reading and writing from a social sciences perspective, reading and writing from a historical perspective, and so on. This is a bit different than the reading and writing skills focus we previously had. So when you add the co-rec piece on top of that, knowing students are taking the analytical reading and writing course at the same time as they're taking English 101 or the composition course, instructors just had sort of an added layer. Luckily, most of the instructors who have taught the developmental studies courses for a long time also have taught the composition course with English 101. So they were generally very eager and very supportive of the changes. They're really a great group of instructors, and we're generally very much in support. However, it was important for us, the 3 of us here who are sort of leading the charge and have to keep this going, to stress that adhering to the course design, sort of now more than ever in this co-requisite model, was really important to ensure success for our students. So for instance, one component of our co-requisite model is to allow for a little bit of flexibility in the developmental course, weekly content, in case there's a need for added instruction, added explanation on certain topics, things that are stressed in the English 101 course. So for example, the analytical reading and writing teachers should be checking in periodically with the students to see how things are going in their composition course. If the students say they're struggling with something like the rhetorical situation, for example, the analytical reading and writing instructor needs to allow time to go over the rhetorical situation and be flexible with their own sort of analytical reading and writing content that was planned instead. So students might need some extra explanation on what a rhetorical situation actually is and how do I use it, related to the work they're doing in the composition course, but you can also relate it to the work you're doing in the analytical reading and writing course. So it's just a little bit different than the way things had necessarily been done before, but something that we've tried to really talk about as a group, those of us that are teaching it, to make sure we have consistency for the students' sake and to make sure that students are getting similar experiences regardless of which instructor they have for their ARW course. So, and related to professional development, another thing is that our sessions not only stressed the importance of consistency, but they also focused on the ability to use a variety of tools that we have available, especially through our online learning platform, not only for online classes, but for all modalities. So at FLCC, as Maureen mentioned, we're offering a variety of choices for students. And yes, it feels like, quite a bit sometimes, but students do get the opportunity to take courses face-to-face, synchronous or asynchronous online, or high flex, where a student can choose the modality on a daily basis. Because of this, we have made sure to expose all the instructors that are teaching these courses to online tools like VoiceThread, wikis, Hypothesis, and more. I'm primarily teaching online courses at the moment just because of responsibility, asynchronous online, because of responsibilities I have outside of my teaching role. So I use VoiceThread in those asynchronous classes as a way to appeal to a variety of learning styles. VoiceThread, if you're not familiar with it, allows students to speak a response to a given prompt, for example. It's an easy way to use it. I give them a prompt, they speak their answers instead of writing them. I tell students that it gives them a break from having to write everything out all the time, like they do in discussions when they're online, or journals and assignments. Everything's sort of that same kind of written format. So in this case, it gives them, I tell them it's giving them kind of a break from having to write everything out, but it also appeals to, like I said, students who learn differently or who are more comfortable in different situations. So they talk about their opinions and they express their thoughts just like they would more in a face-to-face class, that component that sometimes feels like it's missing. So I also tell them that it helps me to feel more connected to them when I actually hear their voices, since I don't get to do that at like the same way that I would if we were in class face-to-face. So it really, it gives us an opportunity to connect. Now, they're great tools to use in my asynchronous online, but they are also great tools to use in a face-to-face or a synchronous online class, or any of the other modalities that we're using. So we really try to offer a lot of professional development and support for our instructors to increase the chances of success with this new model. And we've tried to utilize everything that we've learned previously to inform each time what we're doing moving forward in order to really support our students in the best way that we can. So I think, as was mentioned earlier, if there are any specific questions you have about this part of the presentation, feel free to throw them in the chat and then we will talk about them at the end. And at this time, I would like to pass it over to my colleague, Beth.
Thanks, ladies. And hello, everyone. So I'm probably going to change this slide to lessons we are still learning because I don't think the ED quite encapsulates, what we are sort of trying to achieve here. But here is one, I would call this a success that we had. So I know earlier we mentioned we had a change in AVP. So our original AVP did not want these listed as a co-rec, and you can see how that worked out for us. So from when we started in spring of 20 until we sort of realized, I think, what was going on, which was spring of 2021, we had only a 36% enrollment in the co-rec structure, meaning that 64% of our students chose to take the classes one before the other, and only 36% of them chose to attempt them together. from what we learned about talking to advisors and faculty, this is the way that they were being advised. So this isn't so much that students were saying, I don't want this, so much as the advisors saying, well, this is really how you should do it. No one wants to take 2 English courses at the same time. We want you to sort of glide in as opposed to jump in. But for all the reasons that we've talked about, that's not how this is structured. It's not taking 2 English courses at one time. It's taking a supportive analytical reading and writing course that's supporting writing in all the disciplines, sciences, history, social science, in addition to those first year classes. So all the normal classes, this course is designed to support writing in all of those classes. And so once we were able to sort of better educate, we did meet with the advisors, but I just don't think it sunk in, right? Like COVID was happening in 2020 and it was just a crazy year, to put it mildly. Once we really were able to educate, we saw a great improvement. So now we are at 59% of our students as of this semester enrolled in that co-rec model, and only 41% are attempting it, in a one after the other model. So for one semester, this is a huge jump for us, which we think is fantastic. The next thing that is up for this particular item is our AVP. Our new AVP has encouraged us to submit the paperwork to have these courses formally listed as a co-requisite. So we'll be working on that. Hopefully by the end of fall, we'll have that in place in time for folks who are registering for spring. And it will still give folks the opportunity to choose, right? That link can always be unbroken by an advisor or by someone at our one-stop center if they choose to do it. But basically, it just makes sure that folks know that the status quo is to enroll students in both. And then if there's some compelling reason, which there often is, to separate them, they simply have to purposefully break that link instead of doing the opposite, right? Where folks go into it having 2 separate items and then have to make the co-rec link during registration. And so we anticipate that by doing that, it's going to further, maybe the next time we meet with you guys, hopefully our little line graph will have more data, and we will be able to show you another increase based on, something you really don't think about. We did all this wonderful professional development and, Matt spoke with us and we met with a lot of you, Monroe, on, how you guys were doing it. But it's these little weird paperwork things, I think, that can sometimes make all the difference when you're looking at numbers. So yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah, it wasn't something really any of us thought about. We just kind of went with what our AVP said. We were like, well, that seems weird, but you're in charge, so okay, and now we're sort of seeing I don't know if it's fallout, but just the consequences of those decisions. So dun dun dun, here we have our pass rates for this crazy last year. It's 0.95, so this is to be expected. So obviously the blues pass and the oranges fail. I thought it was very interesting when I was going over these statistics that spring we actually did better than in fall, because spring is basically where all of our courses were chopped in half. So I know I personally started out with face-to-face courses that had to be moved to all online. For this population, especially, that's a huge move. You can't just take folks like out of coming to see you twice a week and plunk them into an online environment that they don't know how to use, and really expect them to be successful. So I'm going to chalk it up though to all of our faculty. They were, like Jackie said, everybody just pivoted. We did the best we could. We were ready to put things online. We had an online version of the course ready to go. I know for my part, I met with my students just synchronously, right? So once we got them used to the idea of meeting in WebEx, we did that instead of them coming to campus. And so I don't know, to me, that's a success, right? Anytime we have a nice fair chunk of our students passing in a semester where things were absolutely crazy, I'd say that's a success. Summer's always great for us at FLCC. I don't know if you guys find that at your institutions. I think summer students are just unique. When they're coming in the summer, they're ready to get started. They're just a different, perhaps a different kind of student. But then in fall, we didn't do quite as well as we had hoped. So it's tough to tell. So fall, we had two options. We had either a fully online option or synchronous options. Maureen, do we have face-to-face in fall? I think it was completely off campus, right? Okay, that's what I thought. And then in spring, we did see the return of very, very, very limited face-to-face sections. But we continue to work on improvements. We would love, to see those rise, obviously, maybe, more towards half and half. And so the other piece of data here we have our 101 pass rates, which I think are actually kind of interesting when you look at all of these. So obviously we've got our analytical reading and writing students are co-enrolled in these 101 sections. So they're all in here somewhere. You can see again, really big boosts in pass rates during the summer as a trend. But you can also see, the relatively similar pass rate for fall. And obviously we have a winter schedule that we don't offer our 090 or our 095 classes. So we'll continue to monitor these. I know Matt's original slide was talking about that really nice boost to those college courses, with this structure. So we're happy to be able to collect this data and kind of contribute to that number. And yeah, we'll keep tabs on this, and all of this we're looking to put into some kind of publication. And I know that's Jackie's piece for the where we're headed, but we are keeping very close tabs on all of these numbers, taking a look at trends, trying to figure out what this means, how can we improve, because that's just our job, right? That's why we did all these different things, 4 classes to 2 classes to 1 class to now a co-rec. It's our job to stay afloat with the latest research and the latest things that are happening in our developmental writing community to ensure the success of our students. So here's a qualitative piece. I know quantitative is sometimes a little easier to look at than qualitative data, but I thought these numbers were impressive enough that we should sort of feature them here in our lessons we're learning section. So what we did is we received permission from IRB to put out an informal student survey of all of our 095 sections so far. So that was everything from spring 2020 forward. Admittedly, our response rate wasn't over the top, but certainly it was enough to get a sampling of how our students are feeling. And frankly, it really sort of coincides with the end of the semester surveys that we've been sending out to students. So the general consensus on these courses is very positive for students who take the time, to actually give us feedback on these different areas. So 75% felt like, taking them both at the same time made them more successful in 101. Half of our students said, if I took 101 without 095, I don't think I would have been as successful. 88% felt like the focus of the course was appropriate, which is great because that tells us that by and large, our faculty, whether they're adjunct or full-time or anybody, our professional development is getting through. If students are able to articulate and understand the purpose of a course, that means that we're doing our job ensuring that faculty can do both of those things, right? And that they're not just kind of on their own with a syllabus trying to sort of muddle through what does this actually look like? How am I supposed to be teaching this course? Again, most, 76% by and large felt like the skills that they learned in 095 would be needed in 101 in order for them to be successful. And 88% felt that their 095 instructor was performing those regular check-ins that Jackie was referring to, right? So those days when you have to just be on your toes and swap out what you were going to do and swap in something else that 101 needs. Sometimes that's the toughest thing to do, when you're a faculty member. Our students overwhelmingly felt like they were receiving those opportunities, which again, I don't know that we could ask for much more in those realms, just in the sense that students are getting a consistent experience no matter which of us, who they're coming to on campus. Doesn't matter who they're signing up for, what time of day, which campus. We've got all kinds of satellite campuses. By and large, they're getting the same experience, which is really important. And I think it's great feedback for us to take as we move forward. So I'm going to hand it back to Jackie. I think you were doing next steps. Is that right?
Yeah, so really I'll just start us off, and feel free, Maureen or Beth, to jump in at any point. But that was actually a nice segue, Beth, because I do think that, you know, as we move forward, this data piece is important for us to really, you know, see how things are going for the students. I kind of, I think how to say this, as much as it was sort of a mistake in the sense that we had more students taking just one course at a time, it does give us a little bit to compare to. So even though that wasn't necessarily the intention, you know, for them to take them separately, it did allow us a little, it gives us a little bit of data to look at in terms of when they took them separate versus when they took them together, and, you know, and to see how they're doing, but also here, their success in the other courses. I think that's really important. One, because of our focus on sort of across the disciplines with the ARW portion, but also again, taking those two courses together, does it really help, you know, strengthen their success in these other classes that they're often taking at the same time. I know personally that was something I used to struggle with when we were expecting students, you know, to take the developmental studies piece and then say, but you're not ready, you know, for English 101, but you can take everything else at the same time. You can take psychology anyway at the same time. You can take, and some courses that were really heavy reading and writing courses. So it was like, you're ready for this, but not ready for that. So I just sort of like the message better of this kind of co-requisite. And again, this is just me personally. I'm not speaking for the department or the college or anybody else. It's just me personally that I think it really helps, you know, the message to students about why it's important to, you know, to get that piece related to the ARW, which, speaking of which, I know there was a question in the chat about this. I don't think we did cover how students are placed. We don't use AccuPlacer anymore. It is transcript review. And Maureen, if you want to speak to that a little bit, we could cover that one real quick before we go on here, maybe.
Yeah, we use multiple measures. So SAT or ACE scores, if they have those, if they have college credit from high school, of course, we use that. And then we went with the biggest share of how we place students is through their high school GPA. So the overall GPA, we did a lot of, we were also part of the Strong Start to Finish program. And, you know, we did a lot of talking with other institutions, and we settled on 75 is our point, where if students have a high school GPA of 75 or above, they place directly into college level English, and 74 and below into the ARW. Then we also have a placement appeal essay that students can write. So if they place into 095, they can write this essay, a nice public, you know, a document that we give them of telling them all about the two classes and what we expect, and what students who are prepared for one or the other are typically have in their backgrounds. And so students write these essays, and I've been evaluating them based on a rubric that we developed. And I would say about 90% of the students who write this placement challenge essay end up placing in English 101. And the others, you know, I recommend the co-rec. So their placement is English 095, the developmental one, with the strong recommendation that they take the classes together. Once in a while we get a student, it's not even written this way, the appeal essay, but they'll argue for why they should be in analytical reading and writing, the developmental course, which they are already in. But it's interesting to hear, you know, it's lots of times it's a student coming back to school after many years, or a student from a different language background or something like that, and they really know they want the support. So confidence is one of the top things that we see our students, you know, ending up with when they do take the English 095, but it's mainly the high school GPA that we use now.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. And so I think that speaks though to that that message, I guess, when you're talking about the message, which is the next couple points there about raising awareness of the course and the co-rec model. That to me is about students, but it's also about faculty across the campus as well. It's really important for us to keep us, meaning those of us in this department involved in these courses, to keep talking to our colleagues and the students and everyone else really about why we have this co-requisite model, what the advantages are, what we're finding, why it's important, and just be sort of consistent with that message to students and to faculty. And I'd love to know that a faculty member in another department could explain it as well as we do in terms of why they should take that, since there are advisors in every department, so they need to be able to speak to it too. So that's something that in terms of next steps is really important for us as the leaders of this model, to really make sure that everybody we work with understands the model and understands why we're doing the model and all of that. And that is a big part of that is our advising office, because they see so many of the students, especially all the incoming students, and they talk to, when a student meets with a faculty advisor, they always have the opportunity to talk to a professional advisor as well, and that through our advising office. So it's really important for us to make sure that we're sort of all on the same page, because I know how confusing that is for students when you get mixed messages about why they should do something or shouldn't do something, especially the students that are less confident, and they kind of want you to tell them what to do, and they're looking for some help and some support. So you really have to be confident in explaining the process or this model and why it works or why it would be good for them. The other thing we did mention there is about moving this change to the official co-requisite. So going through, the actual curriculum committee and the steps that we need to in order to make that official is definitely on our list of things, to do sooner than later. And then keep that, commitment to this formalized assessment. We want to keep, the survey that we developed, we want to keep offering it to students over and over. So we have lots of data and lots of, opinions from students. We're going to do focus groups and to be able to talk to students a little bit more closely about their experiences. And we also have approval for interview questions should we choose to follow up with students individually to see that, talk to me a little bit about the experience, talk to me about what worked and what didn't, and, and why. And because it not only informs the content and the way that we, what we offer and how we offer the course, but it really, again, helps us to speak to why this works, or, gives us a little bit about, to have to say to other students. So I'm always a huge fan of student voice. I think we often, come up with all these things that we know are going to work, and we think they're going to work for students, and we're sure this is the way to do it because we're the professionals and we know, right? And then you talk to students and they look at it a whole different way, or you talk to students and they offer a whole different perspective you weren't even thinking about. So I really believe strongly in getting that student voice over and over as much as we can, because it really does help you to, to modify in the best way that you can. And the last thing that we're looking to do as a group is we really want to write about this. We want to talk to others about what we learned and, and what's working and what's not. So it's really, that's something we love to do, is to, write articles or anything similar, for regional and national publications, so we can share our experiences and continue to present at places like this about, how it's going, and, not only what worked, but what didn't work too, and what we've learned. So Maureen and Beth, I'm sorry, is there anything I missed there, or something you want to add?
I think you did great.
It's perfect. Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah.
I love the old school phone sound too. Is that the answering machine too? That's pretty great. It's been a
Yeah.
while since I've heard one of those floating around.
Jackie's at her mom's house.
I am.
that's
So I'm helping my mom who actually recently had surgery. And so I've been here for a bit, and it's funny, yeah, because we don't really have that at our house much anymore. So it is fun to hear it sometimes. So how about questions then? Can we answer any questions? Feel free to, Matt, if I missed anything in the chat, throw it in, or if anybody wants to, unmute and ask a question, feel free.
Yeah, please. Jackie, I know Tyler asked a question that you might have answered directly to him, but I think it was a good question about HyFlex and student interest in those different modalities. It might be valuable. We can get started with Q&A with just a quick response to that.
Yes. So again, I'll start us out, ladies. If there's anything you want to add, go ahead. Beth, you may or may not have more of an idea of this, but I'll tell you just so that was a great question, Tyler. Thank you. I do think that the HyFlex option is an awesome option for our students. Now, not every college has, the same makeup of students, but I know for our students, it really offers a lot of flexibility. As far as how it's working, I'm not sure that we have, if you want to call it that, I'm not sure if we have, a lot of data just yet because it's just started, but I will give you some anecdotal evidence that I have, which is my husband teaches multiple sections of classes. He works at FLCC also, and he teaches multiple sections in that HyFlex format. I think part of it's going to be how you look at it. Like, there are days that he has only 3 students in class. And I think as he and I have been talking about it, I think it is a change in mindset that we need when we look at this, because I think our gut, all of us who have primarily taught face-to-face for a majority of our career, we look at that as, wow, a lot of students aren't showing up. Where are all the students, right? But we offered them that option when we offered a HyFlex format. In theory, a student who signs up for HyFlex could really be an asynchronous online student the entire semester. And that technically is part of the option for that. So I think I'm hoping that if our institution looks at this in terms of success, that they don't measure numbers of bodies in seats, if that makes sense, because to me anyway, in that HyFlex model, you have to be prepared that really, in theory, almost no students could show up, because they're giving them that option and they have to decide day to day. But I do think in talking about it with other people, like I do a lot of work with our local school districts, and in talking to K-12 teachers about that model, they are scared to death of that model. They're like, what do you mean you give them a choice? Nobody would ever show up. What are you talking about? Like, how could you give them a choice to show up in class, but it's really not like that. So I really hope that like I said, when we're looking at success, that it's not about how many people actually came face to face, because you have to know you're offering them that option, so I hope that makes sense. It's just sort of not like the same way to measure, as we normally do. But I think they're fairly successful so far, but it's really early for us in the process.
And I just wanted to point out that of our developmental course, analytical reading and writing, we're not we don't have any HyFlex classes. We've got 2 face-to-face this semester. We've got 1 synchronous online, and then we have 6 that are fully online, one of which is SUNY online. So for students who are taking FLCC courses through the SUNY online portal, we have a section going that Jackie's teaching. So it's possible. I mean, it was by instructor choice. If they wanted to offer HyFlex, there was I think instructors got paid $1,000 to go through training. They had some kind of grant or something. We have some other people in our department teaching other courses through HyFlex, but not our developmental sections.
I just wanted to add on to that. So I offered one. It didn't run, unfortunately. And so I would just sort of 2 things. I just want to make sure you guys know that HyFlex means it's in like a specialized classroom. So you have the telecast of your lecture going out to people who want to listen synchronously. You have folks sitting in your classroom, and then you also have your asynchronous folks Jackie alluded to. Personally, I think students are going to love it once they actually know what it means, because I don't think this time around anybody really knew what it meant to take a HyFlex course. I think that with our population, working students, older students, younger students, students who need lots of flexibility, that once they maybe realize what it means, to have a HyFlex course that you, in theory, don't ever have to come, or maybe you come twice, or maybe you sit in your living room every time and you listen to lecture. I think it's going to actually be quite popular it's just my prediction. It's a spidey sense. So I don't know how we plan on doing education, as to what it actually means to take a high flex course, but I definitely look forward to seeing your plans.
Yeah, and back to my plug for students, I'm hoping we utilize the students, the ones that took it and did well and understand what it means, and to be able to explain why that's so flexible. Because I think about it every time I get in my asynchronous online classes, when I get students that, send me messages and this happened and that happened and this thing came up in my life, and, all of that. That happens to all of us. I mean, I'm a student currently myself. I'm taking classes through Northeastern, and I can't tell you how many times that I've had things like that come up myself. And it's nice to have flexibility. And I just think I agree with you, Beth, 100%, that it's something that is going to take, a little bit of a culture shift, so to speak. And it really is going to depend on the faculty and staff and students to be able to explain why this really is a great option. So I hope we utilize the students that, are successful. Cheryl had a question in the chat, I noticed, about ARW counting as an elective. I think Maureen mentioned this briefly earlier about this class earns imputed credit. So they don't really get credits toward their program credits. Am I explaining that right, Maureen? Maybe you want to add on.
Right, it doesn't count as an elective, but it does count toward financial aid credit and towards students, full-time load or whatever the load is. If they're taking 3 other classes in ARW, then they're at 12 credits and it's a full load, which is important for financial aid reasons. Yeah, I mean, it is hard to get extra things to fit, but definitely worthwhile. And I don't believe we have many programs that don't have room for an elective. So I guess it does count there now that I'm saying this aloud. I'm not really.
We have an issue because we have a co-requisite. We have a reading class and we pair it with like psychology, sociology, things like that. So we have the authentic reading comprehension skills. But one thing we found is a lot of students that if they're in a major that doesn't have room for electives, then they really can't get it in there, or financial aid won't pay and things like that. So that was my question. So thank you.
I'm want to be sensitive to the time, especially in the afternoon here. So I think we probably should wrap up here. I take it as a really good sign that there are questions, and there are probably some questions still out there. I appreciate Maureen, Beth, and Jackie, you including your email addresses here so that we can reach out to you with other questions we might have. Thanks again for the presentation. We're looking forward to some future assessment and published works and other next steps that we'll have on our calendars as well. I hope to see everyone else at the next webinar, which is going to be October 15th. Greg Sevick of KU Community College will be discussing the work that he and his colleagues are doing there and its impact on students. So if you have not yet registered and you're available, certainly visit the CPD site, and also you can check out any recordings of previous webinars there as well. Thanks again, Beth, Jackie, and Maureen, and thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon, and I hope to see everyone really soon.
Thank you for having us.
Facilitating, Matt. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Have a great one.